Good evening, good morning. It is time to open today's seminar, but before that, I'd like to make a few attention. Please note that video recording and audio recording of this seminar are prohibited. We appreciate your understanding and cooperation. If you have any questions regarding the seminar, please submit them via the Zoom chat function. The chat message will be visible only to speakers and the seminar organizers. Simultaneous interpretation is available in both English and Japanese. You may select your preferred language by clicking the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your screen. Okay. We will now begin the 38th regular seminar of the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, entitled Digital Heritage Documentation Today. Perspectives from Europe and Japan, Dialogues from the Field. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Kanai Ken from the Secretariat of the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, or JCIC-Heritage in short. I will serve as a facilitator for today's seminar. I would now like to invite Dr. OKADA Yasuyoshi, Vice President of JCIC-Heritage and the President of Japan ICOMOS, to deliver the opening remarks. 岡田先生、よろしくお願いいたします。
皆様、こんにちは。
Good afternoon, everyone.
日本語で失礼いたします。
So I will speak in Japanese.
本日はこのウェビナーに
Thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. I do really appreciate your participation. Thanks to the quick country introduction, my name is Yasuyoshi Okada, and I serve as the Vice President of the International Consortium for Cultural Heritage Cooperation. As we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to offer a few opening remarks. Our consortium has been in existence for 20 years, and today's webinar marks our 38th study session. And as a special feature of this session, we are pleased to welcome an expert from Italy, a country that has consistently led the world in cultural heritage preservation, to speak at this webinar. The other title, as I mentioned before to you. First, I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Grazia Tutti and the faculty member of the CHEDAR in Italy for kindly agreeing to participate at this session. Speaking of the CHEDAR, I'm quite sure you are aware of that. It stands for Cultural Heritage Digitalization and Resilience. As I believe will be explained later, it's based at the University of Florence. And then I understand that CHEDAR is active in the Mediterranean culture sphere, utilizing the latest science and technology to address the threat to cultural heritage caused by climate change and human activities. And I'm informed that today, Professor Tutti will deliver a keynote speech on strategies for the preservation of European cultural heritage using CHEDAR's 3D technology, while Professor Alessandro CONTI and Professor Lidia FIORINI will discuss spatial information surveying of the large-scale historic building using the project at the Pitti Palace in Florence as an example.
一方、日本の方からはですね、
From the Japanese side,
国際機関、
we are planning to invite experts active in organizations such as CIPA, a leading international body in the field of heritage documentation, to engage with the CHEDAR faculty members.
ここで相まみえていただくということを目論んでいるところであります。CIPA
The acronym CIPA, CIPA, originates from the French term for the International Committee on Architectural Photogrammetry. But today, it functions as an international platform that brings together many experts in fields such as heritage documentation and remote sensing, as well as one of the long-standing international scientific committees within ICOMOS.
国際学術委員会、インターナショナル・サイエンティフィック・コミュニティの一つとして、機能しています。トゥッチ先生は、
I believe Professor Tutti currently serves as Vice Chair of CIPA.
日本ICOMOSでは、かつては、
In the past, ICOMOS Japan's simply sent a representative to CIPA. However, in light of the remarkable advancements in digital technology in recent years, we decided last year to bring together individuals active in this field under the umbrella of CIPA's National Committee.
本日はそのメンバーの中で
Today, from among these members,
今日の会全体の
we have asked
まず文化庁のIKAWA
Mr. Hirofumi IKAWA of the Agency for Cultural Affairs to explain the overall purpose of today's meeting. And we will also listen to the presentation by Mr. Atsushi Noguchi of Komatsu University of Education on Japan's position in international cooperation in the field of digital technologies, and by Mr. Masafumi Abe of the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties on example of Japan's international cooperation in 3D measurements. And then in the final session, after the break, we plan to invite the speakers back to the stage for a panel discussion.
その進行とコーディネートには芝浦工業大学の岡崎留美
Dr. Rumi Okazaki of Shibaura Institute of Technology will be moderating and coordinating the session. Please refer to the materials you have in front of you for more detailed profiles of the speakers. Now, as the chair of ICOMOS Japan, I'm deeply looking forward to today's webinar, which connects Japan and also Italy through the consortium. I believe this event is truly timely and I'm very excited about it.
ただいまよりおよそ2時間半
This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 2 hours. On behalf of the consortium, we'd like to ask for your cooperation in helping us ensure this webinar is a productive and successful event for all participants. Thank you very much for all the speakers and for the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Okada Sensei. Next, Dr. IKAWA Hirofumi, Heritage Conservation Specialist at the Agency for Cultural Affairs of Japanese Government and a member of ICOMOS CIPA, provides an introduction of this seminar. Please.
Thank you, Kanai-san. So my name is Hirofumi Ikawa from the Agency for Cultural Affairs. I also serve on the CIPA, Japan National Committee. So allow me to set the stage a little further and explain specifically why this webinar is happening now. Digital technologies, 3D scanning, point cloud data, HBIM, are transforming how we document and conserve cultural heritage around the world. In Europe, the momentum is strong. The EU Commission has called for all at-risk monuments to be digitized in 3D by 2030. In Japan, frameworks for digital documentation are also being built and strengthened. In short, both sides are moving fast and moving in parallel. The question is, are we learning from each other? As President OKADA mentioned, the CIPA Japan National Committee was re-established last year. What I would like to share is the specific chain of events that's brought us here today. It started in 2025 when CIPA Honorary President Professor Mario Santana Quintero and colleagues visited Japan. That visit reconnected Japan with the global heritage documentation community and set things in motion. Later that year, in August, the CHEDAR team came to Japan for the event at the Italy pavilion of Expo 2025 Osaka. That visit opened a direct dialogue between Italian researchers and CIPA Japan colleagues, including Professor Okazaki. Then, in December, CIPA Japan Committee Chair Professor Noguchi traveled to Florence and presented Japan's activities to the CHEDAR team in person. Through that exchange, something became very clear. Japan and Italy and Europe more broadly are wrestling with the same fundamental challenges. This webinar is Professor Noguchi's response to that discovery. So, what are those shared challenges? I would like to frame today's conversation around three questions. The first, from data to knowledge. To borrow a phrase from Professor Tutti's own work, data of unknown quality is not neutral. It's a risk. As 3D technologies spread rapidly, how do we ensure accuracy, provenance, interoperability, and meaningful interpretation? It is not enough to acquire data. We need to know what the data means, where it came from, and whether it can be trusted. The second, complexity at scale. The Palazzo Pitti project illustrates the challenge beautifully. 1,533 documented spaces, 5,137 laser scans, over 54,000 drone images. At this scale, documentation is only the beginning. How do we manage, interpret, and return that knowledge to the people who need it? Japan faces the same question with its own complex historic structures. The third, field experience, not just results. Today is not a showcase. We want practitioners from both countries to share what is actually difficult, the unresolved problems in 3D documentation, international data sharing, and community access. Real dialogue means being honest about the gaps, not just presenting the successes. The fact that researchers from Italy and Japan are in the same virtual room today, ready to have this conversation, is already meaningful. We hope today's exchange will be the first step towards a lasting partnership. So thank you very much, and back to you, Kanai-san.
Thank you, Ikawa-san. We will now move on to the keynote speech. It is our great pleasure to invite Dr. Grazia TUCCI, professor at the University of Florence, vice president of ICOMOS Italia, and vice president of ICOMOS CIPA-Heritage documentation. Dr. TUCCI will speak on the topic CHEDAR and Europe's Cultural Heritage 3D Strategy. Dr. TUCCI, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, and really thank you very much for joining us today. It is a great pleasure and an honor to take part in this seminar, and I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, to the Agency for Cultural Affairs, and to all the organizers for making this event possible. This webinar offers a valuable opportunity to open a dialogue between Japan and Europe on a topic that is becoming increasingly central to our field. how digital technologies can support the documentation, conservation, and transmission of cultural heritage. I am truly delighted to share this moment with you. Let me briefly introduce myself. I am an architect and full professor of geomatics at the University of Florence, where I teach in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. More than 15 years ago, I founded the GECO Lab, the Laboratory of Geomatics for Environment and Cultural Heritage Conservation. And our group brings together architects, engineers, archaeologists, geographers, geologists, and specialists in digital media. This multidisciplinary structure is essential because cultural heritage documentation is never only a technical task. It requires interpretation, scientific rigor, and dialogue between different forms of knowledge. In addition to my academic activity, I currently coordinate CHEDAR, Cultural Heritage Digitalization and Resilience. CHEDAR is a project promoted by the Italian Ministry of University and Research within the Legacy Program of Expo 2020 Dubai, with the aim of strengthening research, advanced training, and innovation in the field of cultural heritage. The initiative brings together universities, research centers, and cultural heritage institutions to develop and share expertise in areas such as digital documentation, preventive diagnostic, risk assessment, and heritage resilience. By bringing together research, technological innovation, and training, CHEDAR aims to transform digital knowledge into practical tools for the long-term protection and management of cultural heritage. Several of the experiences I will present today have been developed within this framework. Before presenting our projects, I would like to provide a broader framework. Today, I will briefly introduce two perspectives that shape our work. The first is the Italian approach to cultural heritage conservation, which places great importance on authenticity, documentation, and long-term preservation. The second is the European digital strategy, which increasingly sees digital heritage as a shared resource for research, conservation, and society. Against this background, I will then present a few case studies developed at GECO Lab and within the CHEDAR initiative. To understand our approach to digital heritage, it is useful to begin with a broader question. What exactly are we trying to preserve? Italy is often described as an open-air museum, living among an extraordinary concentration of archaeological sites, historical city, and monuments has profoundly shaped our conservation culture. At the heart of the Italian conservation tradition lies a simple principle: authenticity matters. Our first responsibility is to preserve the original material evidence of the past rather than reconstructing what has been lost. For this reason, documentation, material analysis, and diagnostic investigation play a central role in conservation practice. We also consider historical transformation as part of a monument's identity. Buildings and cities change over time, and these changes often tell an important part of their story. This perspective has gradually expanded from individual monuments to historic centers, cultural landscape, and entire territories. During the last decades, the concept of cultural heritage has expanded significantly. Heritage is no longer limited to monuments and artifacts, but also includes traditions, knowledge, memories, and digital resources. Several international charters and conventions contributed to this evolution. Among these developments, I would like to highlight one that is particularly meaningful in the context of today's webinar. In 2003, UNESCO adopted the Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, strongly promoted by Koichiro Matsuura during his tenure as Director General. This convention represented a profound shift in perspective. It reminded us that cultural heritage is not only embodied in monuments and artifacts, but also in knowledge, skills, traditions, performing arts, and social practices that communities transmit from one generation to the next. It is particularly significant that the concept adopted internationally derives from the Japanese notion of Mukkei Bunkazai. In many respects, Japan helped the international community recognize that heritage is not only something we inherit from the past, but also something we actively keep alive in the present. In the same year, UNESCO published another important document, the Charter on the Preservation of Digital Heritage. Even at that early stage, it was already clear that digital resources would become an essential part of our cultural memory, while also raising new challenges related to accessibility, technological obsolescence, and long-term preservation. A few years later, the Faro Convention reinforced this evolution by emphasizing that the value of heritage ultimately resides in the meanings that people and communities attribute to it. While the concept of heritage was expanding, Europe was also redefining its digital future. A key milestone was the Lisbon Strategy of 2000, which identified knowledge and innovation as strategic drivers of development. Within this broader vision, cultural heritage gradually became part of the digital transformation agenda. The focus was no longer only on preserving heritage, but also on making knowledge more accessible, connected, and reusable. One of the first major outcomes of this strategy was Europeana, launched in 2008. Initially conceived as a common access point for digital collections from museums, libraries, archives, and audiovisual institutions, Europeana has grown into one of the world's largest cultural heritage platforms, providing access to more than 60 million digital objects. Behind access, its real contribution has been the promotion of shared standards for documentation, metadata, and interoperability, demonstrating that cultural heritage data can be exchanged and reused across institutions. Europeana is often associated with access to digital collection, but its contribution goes far beyond providing content online. Through frameworks such as the Europeana Data Model and the Europeana Publishing Framework, it has helped establish common standards for describing, publishing, and sharing cultural heritage information. Particularly important is the idea that quality does not depend only on the digital object itself, but also on the quality of its metadata and the clarity of its rights information. This shift from digital object to structured and reusable digital resources has had a profound influence on subsequent European initiatives. Rather than focusing on the individual projects, I would like to highlight the overall trend represented here. During these years, 3D documentation evolved from a series of experimental initiatives into a recognized and increasingly mature field of cultural heritage research. Around 2020, a new phase began. The focus shifted from producing individual 3D models to creating interconnected digital ecosystems. As cultural heritage data became larger and more diverse, issues such as semantic interoperability, knowledge graphs, and long-term sustainability became increasingly important. The objective was no longer simply to digitize heritage, but to enable data integration, reuse, and knowledge generation across institutions and disciplines. This vision was reinforced by the European Commission recommendation on a common European data space for cultural heritage. For the first time, 3D digitization was explicitly recognized as a strategic instrument not only for access and cultural tourism, but also for conservation, risk preparedness, and resilience. The recommendation established ambitious targets for member states, making clear that high-quality 3D documentation should become an integral component of heritage management. Achieving these goals, however, requires more than simply producing large quantities of data. It requires a reliable, well-structured, and reusable information. This is why recent European documents increasingly focus on two closely related concepts: complexity and quality. It seems it doesn't. Okay. When discussing 3D digitization, quality is often associated with geometric accuracy. However, European guidelines propose a much broader perspective. A high-quality digital model should be supported by robust historical documentation, comprehensive metadata, and a clear definition of its intended use. Equally important is the preservation of the entire digital workflow, because future technologies may enable new analysis and new interpretations from the same data. In this perspective, metadata became as important as geometry. This evolution has led to a new generation of European infrastructures, among which ECOS plays a central role. ECOS is developing the cloud infrastructure for the European Collaborative Cloud for Cultural Heritage and places heritage digital twins at the center of its vision. The objective is not only to store data, but to create environments where data can be connected, interpreted, and reused over time. In Italy, these developments are reflected in the National Plan for Digitization, coordinated by the Digital Library of the Ministry of Culture. The objective is to create a national ecosystem capable of supporting the production, preservation, enrichment, and the reuse of cultural heritage data. In other words, Italy is building the institutional and technological framework needed to transform digital documentation into a long-term resource for society. So, where do we position ourselves within this framework? At GECO Lab, we consider data to be a decision-making tool. Data whose quality is unknown is not neutral. It represents a risk. For this reason, we focus on 4 key dimensions of quality: accuracy, provenance, interoperability, and the capacity to generate knowledge. From this perspective, a digital model is not simply a representation of a heritage asset. It is a digital resource capable of supporting understanding, conservation, monitoring, and prediction. In cultural heritage, poor data does not simply produce poor knowledge. It may lead to poor conservation decisions, This is why quality is not an option, it is a responsibility. Let me show you a few examples of how we apply this principle in practice. The first example comes from the Galleria dell'Accademia in Florence, best known as the home of Michelangelo's David. In 2010, we were commissioned to carry out a complete digital survey of the museum to support seismic risk assessment and to produce the geometric documentation required for structural analysis. This project illustrates a key point. High-quality digital documentation is not an end in itself. It becomes valuable when it supports conservation and decision-making. Every large-scale survey begins with something that is far less visible than a laser scanner or a 3D models, a rigorous topographic control network. Although often overlooked, this is the foundation of the entire documentation process. It provides the reference framework needed to control accuracy, prevent error propagation, and assess the quality of the final results. The survey data were used to develop finite element models for seismic analysis. These analyses considered not only the structural behavior of the building, but also its interaction with Michelangelo's David. The next step was to integrate the building and the collections into a single information model. This approach supports a more coordinated management of conservation, monitoring, and public access. Let me now introduce a second case study, Giovanni Pisano's pulpit in the Church of Sant'Andrea in Pistoia. This extraordinary work lies somewhere between architecture and sculpture and presents significant conservation challenges. For this reason, it has become a pilot case for the development of a heritage digital twin within the ECOS initiative. The pulpit was dismantled and relocated during the 17th century, altering its original structured configuration. Understanding its current condition, therefore, requires accurate geometric documentation and structural investigation. The geometric layer of the heritage digital twin was created through the integration of laser scanning, photogrammetry, and topographic network. Although it is rarely the most visible part of a survey, the topographic network is one of its most important components. It establishes the reference system that allows data acquired at different times and with different technologies to be integrated consistently. In this project, the network provided the framework for combining laser scanning and photogrammetric data, and will also support future monitoring activities. For this reason, it was physically materialized and carefully documented. The 3D geometry derived from laser scanning was used to generate the finite element model for structural assessment. Because the pulpit contains several elements that are significantly out of plumb, defining their exact position and orientation was essential for obtaining reliable structural analysis. To document the surfaces in greater detail, we used photogrammetry. Data acquisition was particularly challenging because of the limited accessibility of several areas and the lighting conditions inside the church. More than 6,500 images were acquired and processed to generate a high-resolution 3D model. thanks to more than 300 targets. The resulting orthophotos were produced at a resolution of 0.3 millimeters. At this scale, the images become a true analytical tool rather than a simple visual representation. They provided the reference base for condition assessment, thematic mapping, and crack surveys carried out by conservation specialists. It is important to remember that these are not photographs, but metrically accurate images that can be measured and analyzed with precision. The geometric model was then enriched with thematic information and monitoring data. The pulpit is equipped with sensors that continuously record information on its condition and behavior. These data become part of the heritage digital twin, allowing documentation and monitoring to be integrated within a single environment. The objective is to visualize this information directly on the 3D model. In this way, the model becomes the main access point to the knowledge associated with the monument, connecting geometry, diagnostics, monitoring data, and documentation. Behind this integration lies a knowledge graph that organizes relationships between the different types of information associated with the monument. This semantic structure allows data to be connected, queried, and reused more effectively over time. The same approach can also be applied at a completely different scale. This wooden sculpture by Giovanni Pisano depicts an angel presenting the head of John the Baptist. The presence of several holes and assembly points raised an important question. Has the sculpture always looked the way we see it today? To investigate this hypothesis, we combined different sources of digital information. To investigate the internal structure, we used computed tomography. This allowed us to visualize the internal components of the sculpture, including the wood grain, assembly elements, and the traces of previous interventions. The external geometry was documented through photogrammetry. The two data sets were then integrated into a single digital model. The integrated model made it possible to identify and separate the different components of the sculpture. This revealed a more complex construction process than originally expected and provided new evidence regarding possible modifications carried out over time. Once the individual elements had been identified, it became possible to test different configurations digitally without intervening on the original object. Some hypotheses proved compatible with the physical evidence, while others could be excluded. This example shows how digital models can support interpretation as well as documentation and conservation. Let us move from individual monuments to the scale of the urban, landscape. This project focuses on the relationship between Florence and the Arno River, a resource that has shaped the city through its history, but also a source of risk. Climate change, tourism pressure, and environmental transformations are increasingly affecting the conservation of cultural heritage. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the 1966 flood, which caused severe damage to Florence's historic and artistic heritage. For these reasons, it is essential to monitor ongoing transformations and to provide reliable data that can support informed decision-making. That's why we are developing a heritage digital twin of the Arno River, based on a large multi-sensor survey campaign conducted in the historic center of Florence. Now we have like 1 minute more of videos just to understand how the data have been acquired, topographic network, 3D laser scanning, also different kind of 3D laser scanning. You see movable scanner in a boat, mobile mapping and scanning with the wearable and the portable systems. And also some instruments drawn in this case for measuring the bathymetry under the water. And ground penetrating radar acquisition. Drone-based aerial photogrammetry to document the roof and to complete the 3D model. And then the final result, that is just a starting point for the next steps. The data collected through different survey techniques were integrated into a semantic model. The objective was not simply to represent the river and the city in 3 dimensions, but to connect each element with historical, material, functional, and environmental information. In this way, geometry becomes part of a broader knowledge system. One example of this approach is the comparison of bathymetry surveys acquired at different times. By analyzing changes in the riverbed, we can identify areas of instability and better understand ongoing environmental transformations. This information is essential for risk assessment and long-term monitoring. Once the different datasets have been integrated, they can support a variety of analyses at different scales. This includes structural assessment, climate-related simulations, and acoustic studies. Together, they contribute to a decision support environment where cultural heritage can be analyzed through multiple perspectives rather than through isolated datasets. At the monumental scale, the same framework can support detailed structural analysis. Here, the model of Ponte Vecchio was developed to investigate seismic behavior and to simulate the response of the structure under different scenarios. At the urban scale, the platform can also support environmental analysis. This example shows the spatial distribution of the air temperature within the historic center, helping us understand how environmental conditions affect the use and conservation of urban spaces. We also investigated the acoustic dimension of heritage. Using a dedicated monitoring methodology, we analyzed the impact of tourism on the soundscape of Florence and established a reference acoustic baseline that can be updated and compared over time. The image shows the binaural head used for the on-site recording. The value of this analysis lies in their practical applications. They can support heritage management, risk assessment, visitor management strategies, and UNESCO planning activities. At the same time, they create new opportunities for education, public engagement, and long-term monitoring. As I draw to a close, I would like to return to a simple idea. Digital technologies are transforming the way we document, analyze, and manage cultural heritage. However, their real value does not lie in the technology itself. Their value lies in their ability to support better knowledge, better decision, and ultimately better conservation. When digital data are reliable, documented, and connected, they become a resource that can strengthen the resilience of heritage and the communities that identify with it. For this reason, digitalization should not be understood as a technical process alone, but as a long-term investment in cultural knowledge. This is precisely the vision behind CHEDAR. Beyond the research and the digitization, our goal is to contribute to the development of skills, methodologies, and shared practices for the future of cultural heritage. Through training activities, international collaboration, and field-based experiences, we aim to support a new generation of professionals capable of working across disciplines and connecting cultural knowledge with digital innovation. I believe that this change is not only European and not only Italian. It is a shared international responsibility. And for this reason, I am particularly grateful for the opportunity to discuss these topics with our colleagues in Japan today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you indeed, Dr. TUCCI. Our next presentation will be given by Dr. Alessandro CONTI and Lidia FIORINI from the University of Florence. Their presentation is entitled Geomatics and Interpretation for Complex Architectural Structures, the Case Study of Palazzo Pitti. Dr. CONTI, Dr. FIORINI, please take the floor.
Thank you. Lidia FIORINI, which is close to me, are pleased to welcome all participants. At the outset, we would like to extend our sincere thanks to the organizers for their commitment, professionalism, and outstanding efforts in bringing this event together. We greatly appreciate this opportunity to exchange knowledge, experiences, and ideas. I would like to begin with a slide you have already seen, as Palazzo Pitti is another case study carried out by our laboratory and shares the same methodological approach based on managing complexity and ensuring data quality. The experience gained through the documentation of Palazzo Pitti is far too extensive to cover in a single presentation, and it would not be possible to review it entirely here. For this reason, we will focus on a few significant aspects to show how a digital resource built on accurate and reliable data becomes a practical tool for the knowledge, management, and preservation of cultural heritage. Palazzo Pitti, the largest palace in Florence, is a magnificent symbol of the wealth, power, and influence of the dynasties that selected it as their royal residence. Today, it houses 4 museums: the Palatine Gallery and Royal and Imperial Apartments, the Gallery of Modern Art, the Treasury of the Grand Dukes, and the Museum of Fashion and Costume, together with the offices of the Superintendenza, the authority responsible for the protection of cultural heritage. This video summarizes the history of Pitti Palace. Originally designed in 1458 for the banker Luca Pitti, it was conceived as a relatively small palace built in front of an existing house and a stone quarry that he owned. And this fresco shows the palace as seen from the rear and shows that it stood within the city walls but outside the densely built urban area. The palace was later purchased by the Medici family, who began a major expansion program. Their first intervention was to connect the original structure with the newer additions. And the most significant expansion was the construction of two wings enclosing a large courtyard behind the main building. And here you can see how the complex appeared at the end of 16th century. Over the following centuries, the palace was enlarged several times, eventually becoming one of the largest royal residences in Italy. The last major addition was made in the 19th century. In this period, a new and more comfortable wing was built for the Lorraine Grand Dukes, and this wing was later used by the royal family of the Kingdom of Italy. And now we begin with the acquisition phase, which lasted about 3 years. Designing the 3D documentation workflow proved particularly challenging, as it was initially impossible to fully assess the building's overall extent. The project had to address several key aspects, including fieldwork planning, coordination with property owners, and the processing and management of collected data. The project was developed through a combination of previous experience and extensive field testing. The aim was to ensure the highest possible level of quality, completeness, and resolution consistency, even under the most challenging acquisition conditions. We integrated multiple survey techniques, laser scanning for the interior spaces, and drone photogrammetry for the outdoor areas, which was essential for documenting the most inaccessible portions of the large facades. All acquired data were georeferenced within a single reference system established through a dedicated topographic network. And here are some key figures and metrics from the survey activities. The backbone of a survey is the topographic control network. The network vertices, which were permanently marked and documented, supported both the photogrammetric acquisition and the indoor laser scanning survey. The primary network, measured using GNSS system, consists of 25 vertices, while the secondary network around the building, measured with a total station, consists of 57 vertices. The topographic control network was extended throughout the entire building. This operation required the materialization of an additional 308 vertices and the measurement of 1,546 targets. Establishing a high-precision control network requires a substantial investment of time and resources, which is justified only if it's preserved and reused in the future for updating the 3D documentation or supporting monitoring activities. To document the roof and facades of Pitti Palace, a UAV photogrammetric survey was conducted over 20 days, acquiring more than 54,000 images. To survey the entire complex, more than 5,100 laser scans were acquired. The resulting dataset achieved an average geometric resolution of only a few millimeters. And alongside the geometric survey, a comprehensive photographic campaign was carried out, Every room, including secondary and service spaces, was systematically documented, resulting in an archive of over 12,500 images collected to date. Furthermore, in addition with the geometric data, we recorded for each room its section in the palace, the intended use, flooring type and installation method, ceiling types, and other attributes. In summer, the palace remains even today surprisingly understudied. An article published many years ago referred to the 1,000 rooms of Pitti Palace. However, our survey identified more than 1,500 rooms. And with the exception of exhibition space, most of these rooms do not even have a designated name. Conversely, we assigned a unique identifier to every room, creating a comprehensive room catalog. This was essential for reorganizing the dataset, ensuring that all information could be correctly sorted, archived, and made searchable. This approach applies not only to the data directly supporting the survey operation, but also to thematic datasets. For example, the Sala Bianca, the White Hall, is identified by the ID 11010. How is this identifier structured? The first two digits indicate the floor. We identified 12 different levels followed by a sequential number, and the staircases were named in the same method. Here we see the Poccianti staircase, and its ID is B0022, where the parallel numbers indicates the starting and ending floors. The first outputs of the project were a series of orthographic drawings, which are still essential in heritage building for planning and managing the intervention. And here we see the ground floor plan. The level of detail of the drawings is appropriate for a 150 scale representation. However, they are not designed for conventional printed reproduction, as a print of a floor plan at a 150 scale would measure about 3 by 5 meters. Orthophotos of elevation and cross sections have a resolution of 2.5 millimeters per pixel. This means that, for example, the orthophoto of the elevation can be enlarged up to the scale of this detail highlighted in red. The lion head located beneath the palace window with the decay of the stone clearly visible. And here we can see two cross-sections with the ortho images of the main halls and orthophotos of the facades. And now I would like to present our proposal for managing survey data. As you have seen, this project generated a very large amount of data, and over the course of 3 years, it quickly became difficult to find a specific scan of all the photographs taken in a particular room. And once the final drawings have been produced, much of this information risks being forgotten or overlooked, especially since no standardized system for survey data management exists. And to address this issue, we developed a 3D geodatabase compliant with CityGML and Indoor GML standards in order to describe spaces and their relationships. Here you can see how rooms, photographs, scans, and finished are linked. This type of digital twin is useful for managing the survey process, but it could also support the management of the building itself. In our experience, Heritage BIM is not always the most effective solution in these cases. BIM focuses on solid elements such as walls and floors, while in heritage building, most of the information we have is about surfaces and spaces. And this is a research project, so we do not yet have a complete or user-friendly solution. By contrast, these systems allow a 3D model to be generated directly from 2D drawings and enables you to perform searches simply by selecting the geometry of the objects. By linking information to the geometric objects representing the rooms, it becomes possible to display all associated data, ID code, location, dimension, area, intended use, as well as floor type, wall finishes, and contained objects. Rooms are represented as simple boxes, but they are connected to the scans taken inside them, although they can be modeled in greater detail when necessary. And we also include all doors and windows so we can manage the connection between rooms. All doors and windows are also identified, and each opening shows also the kind of frame. And in this example, this room has 5 doors, and each door has its own attributes. The system supports different kinds of queries, and we can also analyze routes between rooms. And moreover, we can also run more complex spatial queries. For instance, if water is leaking through a ceiling, the system can tell us which room above is causing the leak. And another line of research concerns facade monitoring. Pitti Palace is built with a typical stone of Florence, which is prone to the detachment of fragments, a dangerous condition exacerbated in recent years by extreme weather events driven by climate change. And this poses a safety concern. For this reason, facades are continuously monitored by specialists. Our study used the existing data to develop a GIS-based information system to identify and catalog each individual stone element of the facades. And this image shows a detail of the information system. Each stone element is identified by an ID and can be associated with its condition or conservation report. We also considered that the oriented photographs used to generate the photogrammetric model could assist preliminary visual inspection and help to orient the on-site assessment. And we conclude with a project of interpretation and dissemination developed for an exhibition in Palazzo Pitti, dedicated to the tapestries commissioned by the Grand Duke Ferdinando II in honor of his ancestor Cosimo de' Medici, the first Grand Duke of Tuscany. Originally, these tapestries covered the walls of the Sala di Saturno, a hall that is part now of the painting gallery. The challenge, therefore, was to reconstruct the original layout of the tapestries in the architectural setting for which they have been designed. A team of art historians led by the foremost expert of this collection had extensive historical documentation regarding the original arrangement of the tapestries, as well as the tapestries themselves recently restored and carefully measured. It is noteworthy that the question of the original arrangement of the tapestries, a problem that could also have been resolved through direct measurements, was only raised when the digital technologies made an automated solution seem readily accessible. And this suggests that new tools do not merely provide answers to existing problems, but induce a new cognitive approach by helping to shape questions perceived as relevant for the first time. And at the same time, we had at our disposal a digital model of the room created through laser scanning and photogrammetry. And only by reconstructing these spatial relationships was it possible to give meaning to information that had previously remained isolated. This led to a collaboration between different areas of expertise, a true interdisciplinary exchange. So, by the end of the project, the virtual reinstallation of the tapestries had not only provided a plausible reconstruction of their original arrangement, but had also raised a new question, suggested new interpretive perspectives, and opened previously unexplored avenues for the research. So thank you for your attention, and I would now be happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you very much, Dr. Conti. We need to move next speaker, so I'm sorry there is no answer time. So our next speaker is Mr. Noguchi Atsushi from Komatsu University, a subcommittee member of the West Asia Working Group of JCIC-Heritage and a member of ICOMOS CIPA. The title of his presentation is entitled Digital Documentation of Cultural Heritage and International Cooperation, Japan's Present and Future. Sensei, please.
Buongiorno Italia, good afternoon Japan, and hello to everyone. It is a great honor to have this opportunity to speak today. My name is Atsushi Noguchi from Komatsu University, and I'm also serving as the chair of CIPA Japan. Today, I would like to talk about digital documentation of cultural heritage and international cooperation. In the limited time available, I will introduce the topic through the following 4 points. First, let me briefly introduce myself. My original background is in archaeology. I have been involved in field research on archaeological sites dating from the Paleolithic to the Bronze Age in Japan, West Asia, and South Asia. More recently, I have also been engaged in international cooperation projects related to the digital documentation of cultural heritage in Central America, West Asia, and South Asia. The reason I became involved in digital documentation of cultural heritage goes back to my fieldwork in Pakistan. At sites associated with chart sources, we were faced with a very large number of artifacts. It was simply impossible to record them or using conventional hand-drawn archaeological drawing. Therefore, we began recording stone tools using a desktop laser scanner. "3D measurement is a highly versatile technology that can be applied to a wide range of objects with three-dimensional forms. In my own work, I began with 3D measurement of archaeological artifacts and excavated sites. Since then, I have recorded everything in 3D, from small objects to large-scale heritage, folk tools, buildings, and even broad landscapes. More recently, I have also been working on new methods such as 3D Gaussian splatting and their application to XR. As my work expanded from recording archaeological materials to a wider range of heritage fields, I have had more opportunities to serve as an instructor in technical training for various sectors, both in Japan and overseas. This has included serving as a lecturer for ICOMOS webinars and lecture courses. Now, let me move on to the first section, an overview of Japan's contribution to digital documentation of cultural heritage, especially 3D measurement technology. Japan has a history of around half a century of contributing to international cooperation in cultural heritage. Among the earliest initiatives to introduce digital recording was the laser scanning of Roman period monuments, buildings, and archaeological remains in Tyre, Lebanon, using early large-size Cyrax and Rig LMS scanners. Attempts were made to record the existing condition of the site and to carry out digital reconstruction. Thirdly, we've just heard that the site is damaged by ongoing armed conflict. We strongly hope that a ceasefire and the protection of lives will be implemented promptly, and that a system of cooperation will be prepared for the assessment and restoration of cultural heritage damage. Another landmark project was the laser scanning of the Bayon Temple in Cambodia. In this project, a scanner was suspended from a balloon in order to capture areas that were difficult to scan from the ground, such as the upper parts of the temple tower. This was a particularly notable attempt in the period before drones and compact scanners became widely available. The projects in Lebanon and Cambodia were both part of Japan's humanitarian support related to recovery from civil conflict. At the same time, those were carried out in collaboration with international organizations, including UNESCO. The activities in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, are another example. In addition to topographic measurement and ground-penetrating radar survey on site, efforts were also made to reconstruct 3D models of the vanished Great Buddha statue using photographs taken in the 1970s. So this is one of the work of Tokyo National Institute for Cultural Property. As 3D measurement equipment has become more accessible and technology has become more widely used, the range of applications has expanded. Accordingly, activities have also broadened from the actual implementation of measurement and recording to technology transfer and practical use. Here, I show on a world map some of the major projects that have included 3D digital documentation. Because of historical and geographical proximity, many projects have been carried out in Asia, but there have also been projects in Oceania, Central and South America, and at Ostia in Italy as well. Some of the early projects focused on the recording, protection, and restoration of cultural heritage damaged by armed conflict. This has remained a consistently important theme in Japan's international cooperation in cultural heritage up to the present day. In recent years, 3D digital recording has also attracted attention as part of a broader approach to cultural heritage risk management, including natural disasters. Here, I would like to introduce emergency documentation of cultural heritage damaged by the flood that struck Pakistan in 2022. In 2023, next year of the floods, the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage conducted a damage assessment survey in cooperation with the Directorate General of Antiquities, Sindh Province, Pakistan. The schedule was extremely tight. We have to visit 7 sites over 6 days, covering a total distance of about 2,400 kilometers. We needed to obtain detailed documentation in a very short time. The World Heritage Site of Mohenjo-Daro was also among the affected cultural heritage sites, alongside assessment by specialists in cultural heritage disaster prevention and architectural structures. One of the objectives was to record the current condition of the damaged heritage site. For the purpose, photogrammetry using small drone and LiDAR scanning using mobile devices were selected as practical solution. In the HR area of Mohenjo-Daro, with only a 15-minute automated flight program, we were able to complete detailed documentation about 200 by 150 meters area. This is an orthomosaic image generated from the textured model. It allows us to examine the current surface condition of the HR area. The same data are shown here as an elevation model with color gradation. We can see that the southern and western parts are lower in elevation. These areas were damaged zones even during the Bronze Age. And eyewitness accounts confirm that surface runoff also concentrated in these locations during the intense short-term rainfall of 2022. Based on these results, it becomes possible to predict damage that may be caused by future heavy rainfall events and to evaluate appropriate countermeasures. As another example, I would like to show Ranikoto Fort. It is located in a dry mountainous area in western Sind province, and normally one would not expect it to be closely associated with flood damage. Nevertheless, serious damage occurred to the walls and gates. The southwest gate, located on a ridgeline, suffered large-scale destruction due to water flow concentrated along the mountain path. From the color-shaded relief map based on drone photogrammetry data, we can understand from the terrain that the fort wall functioned like a dam, blocking a sudden flow of water and eventually leading to its destruction. The western wall, extending from the southwest gate, is also located on a ridge and should have been relatively distant from flood damage. However, the top of the wall, enclosed between wall structures, effectively turned into a water channel during flood, resulting in destruction at several points. When the color-shaded relief map is switched to a slope map, the damaged areas become very clear. These points are likely to be damaged again under similar weather conditions in the future. So let's move to next. From the perspective of disaster risk management, it is necessary to select in advance the equipment and technologies that can be applied and to prepare systems that can respond quickly in the places where cultural heritage is located. In such a framework, training local practitioners and building local experts are essential. Such efforts are useful not only for disaster response, but also for a wide range of activities related to the protection and use of cultural heritage. In the Afghanistan case mentioned earlier, local specialists were invited to Japan for training in 3D documentation. There are also ongoing projects in Syria. I myself have been involved in training programs in the Gulf regions and in Central America. Some of these activities will be discussed in the next presentation by Dr. Abe. So here, I will briefly introduce an ongoing project in Central America led by Komatsu University. A training program on 3D measurement technology commissioned by the Agency for Cultural Affairs of Japan was conducted over 5 years at Copan in Honduras and Tikal in Guatemala through a combination of on-site and online workshops. In the later half of the program, the focus shifted from simply developing the individual skills of participants to training local instructors. This was important from the perspectives of overcoming language barriers, especially between English and Spanish, and ensuring sustainability. A relationship between instructors and trainees who share language and culture is more effective, from understanding the significance and purpose of the work to sharing practical challenges and solutions. For example, experts from Honduras who had acquired the skills earlier also served as instructors in the training at TUCCI in Guatemala. In this way, the program has developed into a regional initiative that is not limited to a single site or a single country. The role of the Japanese side is gradually shifting toward that supporting partner, supervising the overall training program, helping to identify and solve problems, and providing regular updates on technology and information. I believe this contributes not only to establishing local autonomy and sustainability, but also to the broader issue of data sovereignty throughout the entire process of acquiring, generating, managing, and using cultural heritage documentation data. As Japan's role in international cooperation continues to shift, it is becoming increasingly important to build and introduce new schemes based on collaboration among industry, government, and academia. Collaboration among industrial, governmental, academic sectors is not simply about introducing new technologies or equipment. It is important to establish and maintain a sustainable scheme in which the different actors share roles in a balanced way, catching up with new technologies and information, evaluating them, establishing criteria and standards within academic and cultural heritage protection frameworks, and providing institutional support for those standards. As one example of international cooperation based on industry, government, academia collaboration, I would like to introduce the creation of VR content from the underground temple tunnels at the Mayan site of Copan in Honduras. This was implemented as part of Japanese government ODA under the supervision of Komatsu University. HoloLabo company provided technology capable of rendering more than 1 billion points of massive point cloud data in real time, without reducing the original data. As a result, a VR content system that can be experienced through Google has been installed and made available to the public at the Copan Archaeological Museum. We have also been continuously organizing meet-up events to connect companies in the IT and XR fields with experts in cultural heritage and museums. These events attracting 100 to 200 participants each time. In an atmosphere different from that of an academic conference, these events provide opportunities to share information about the latest technologies, equipment, and services, and to feedback knowledge from the heritage field. At present, the technology I am most interested in is spatial recording of cultural heritage using 3D Gaussian splatting. This method enables high-definition recording not only of solid object surfaces, but also of light reflection, transmission, and shadows, including their vectors. As a result, it allows a level of reproducibility and immersion in documentation that was not possible before. Sensor fusion with LiDAR LiDAR makes it possible to add more accurate information on object positions, distance, and geometry within space to the splats. The simplification of equipment now makes scanning possible without advanced professional photographic skills. In fact, cultural heritage specialists and curators have been able to acquire data like the ones shown here after only a few minutes of instructions. However, the challenge of digital documentation of cultural heritage is not only to create and preserve high-quality, high reproducible records. At present, information exists in many different forms and media: books, physical objects, digital data on the web, catalogs, brochures, and more. They are dispersed across museums, libraries, and educational facilities. Digitization and web publication are gradually making it possible to use these resources in an interconnected way. However, they are still centered mainly on text and images and do not yet fully share 3D information, positional information, or spatial context related to objects. 3D Gaussian splatting, which digitizes information close to human visual perception, can play an important role in bridging human perception and recognition with generative AI when combined with positional and geometric information. In addition to already accumulated digital information such as text and images, point cloud and mesh-based 3D object data can be integrated into RAG. At the same time, VPS localization using 3D Gaussian splatting data can enable highly accurate linkage between real space and digital twins. If this becomes possible, information dispersed across different formats, media, and storage locations will be freely accessible through mobile devices and smart glasses. This should help lower the barriers to understanding cultural heritage and bring people closer to cultural heritage. Original ideas and advanced initiatives often emerge at the level of individuals or small communities. The focus of industry, government, academia collaboration is to help these initiatives gain social recognition, develop them within institutional frameworks, and make them sustainable. By not only returning the outcomes to communities and individuals domestically, but also sharing them widely with the world through international cooperation schemes, we can contribute to the sustainable protection of cultural heritage on a global scale. This is our vision for the future. This is my agenda, and it comes true soon, I believe. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Noguchi Sensei. The final speaker of today's seminar goes to Dr. Abe Masashi, a Chief of the Conservation Planning Unit at the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties, a subcommittee member of the West Asia Working Group of JCIC-Heritage, and a member of ICOMOS CIPA. The title of his presentation is 3D Digital Documentation of Cultural Heritage and International Contributions. Abe-san, please.
So good afternoon. My name is Masashi Abe from the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties, Japan. Today, I would like to talk about international cooperation projects and 3D digital documentation projects by our institute. So first, let me introduce myself. My specialty is archaeology. So when I was 20 years old, I participated in excavations in Syria for the first time. Since then, I have been involved in excavations in the Middle East countries such as Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Iran. After getting a PhD, I started working at my institute. At the institute, I have been involved in international cooperation projects for the protection of cultural heritage in the Middle East. For example, I organized symposium on the cultural heritage damaged by civil war in Syria, and I also organized many training workshops for experts from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. Nearly 30 years have passed since I first participated in excavations in Syria, but now I have two strong traumas. So my first trauma is related to Syria. I was involved in excavations in Syria for more than 10 years. However, in 2011, Syrian civil war started and many people were killed. In addition, the cultural heritage was seriously damaged. In particular, the destruction of Palmyra by IS was widely reported even in Japan. Furthermore, looting of archaeological sites became a serious problem during the civil war. In Syria, 3,000 archaeological sites were looted. Unfortunately, local people were also involved in looting. It was very shocking for me. I think archaeologists, including myself, who excavated in Syria before the civil war, are to blame. I believe many researchers didn't try to share their excavation results with local communities. After this trauma, now I strongly believe providing opportunities for local people to enjoy history will lead to the protection of archaeological sites in the future. I have another trauma. My institute was also involved in conservation of Bamiyan Buddha statue, which was destroyed by Taliban. When I joined the institute, my first job was to train Afghan archaeologists. One of the trainees was Mr. K. He stayed in Japan for 5 months to receive excavation training. After he returned to Afghanistan, he worked on excavations at Buddhist archaeological site Messainak. But one day, his car was targeted in a bomb attack. One of his colleagues was killed, and he was seriously injured. In August 2021, I received a message from him. He said, because US forces were withdrawing from Afghanistan, Taliban were quickly regaining power and approaching Kabul. And he also got a message from Taliban. That message said Taliban would kill him because he was a member of Bamiyan project by Japanese team. In the end, he escaped to Germany with his family, seeking help from Germany Archaeological Institute. This incident has remained a trauma even now for me. So why did Taliban destroy Bamiyan Buddha statues? There are several reasons. One possible reason is the reopening of National Museum in Kabul. During the civil war, the museum was also damaged. However, under the Taliban government, it reopened. On the opening day, Taliban leaders were invited to the museum as guests, but most of the exhibits were from Hellenistic period or Buddhist period. There were very few Islamic artifacts. This made the Taliban leader feel very uncomfortable. In fact, many archaeologists working in the Middle East focus on the ancient Near East before Islam. There are only a small number of archaeologists who study the Islamic period. Because of this experience, I came to think researchers like us should not ignore the Islamic period and Islamic cultural heritage. If we work in Islamic countries, we need to respect and study their history more carefully. So now I would like to move on to the main topic. From here, I will introduce our international cooperation project and 3D digital documentation project in Bahrain. First, let me explain about Bahrain. Bahrain is a small island country in the Persian Gulf in the Middle East. Yes. Bahrain is famous for paradiving, oil, and Formula One Grand Prix. However, there is another famous thing in Bahrain. Bahrain is also famous for ancient burial mound. In Bahrain, there are a number of ancient burial mounds. And this is a picture of another ancient burial mound field in Bahrain. Burial mounds in Bahrain have decreased number due to urban development, but it is known that Bahrain once had about 75,000 ancient burial mounds. There is no other places in the world like Bahrain, so in 2019, UNESCO inscribed these burial mounds on the list of World Heritage. These burial mounds were constructed about 4,000 years ago when Bahrain was called Dirmun. So Dirmun was one of the neighboring kingdoms of Mesopotamia. This kingdom dominated maritime trade, connecting Mesopotamia, Oman, and Indus. And this kingdom flourished about 4,000 years ago. Bahrain is currently regarded as the center of Dirmun. In Bahrain, not only burial mounds, but also remains of walled town, temples, and gigantic royal mounds from Dirmun period still survive. Now, the Tokyo National Research Institute for Cultural Properties has been carrying out international cooperation project in Bahrain for nearly 15 years. In 2007, Sheikh Hamai, she is one of the royal family, she came to Japan. During her visit, she observed training program for Iraqi specialists at our institute, and she requested cooperation project for the protection of cultural heritage in Bahrain. So this is a starting point. In December 2011, Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage dispatched a team to Bahrain to conduct need assessment. At the time, Bahrain was planning to inscribe the Dirmun burial mounds on the list of UNESCO World Heritage. As a result, Bahrain requested Japan's cooperation in the preservation and excavation of Dirmun burial mounds. So in 2012, we invited 2 experts from Bahrain to Japan for a study tour on the preservation and presentation of burial mounds in Japan. For 2 weeks, they visited Japanese burial mounds and museums to learn Japanese examples. In 2015, we also started excavations at Wadi Al-Said, one of the Dirmun burial mound fields. This project continued for 10 years until 2024. We excavated 50 burial mounds and we revealed many new aspects of ancient Dirmun civilization. The result of our excavations are displayed at the National Museum Bahrain. We are not sure how much our project contributed, but the Dirmun burial mounds were inscribed on the list of the UNESCO World Heritage in 2011. After this success and after COVID ended, we started several new projects in 2023. First, we started a new archaeological project at another Dirmun burial mound field. This site, Ali West, is now attracting attention because it may contain the oldest Dirmun royal mounds. We are currently undertaking excavations at this site. So during our excavations, we try to hold an open day event every year to show results of our excavations for local people. Each year, many Bahraini people join this event. We also started another project. This project was for the preservation of Islamic cultural heritage. In Shia Cemetery in Bahrain, many historic Islamic gravestones still remain. These were made between the 11th century and 19th centuries. They are decorated with Arabic inscripts, and they include information about the buried person. So they are very important for studying Islamic period in Bahrain. However, their condition is not so good. Salt in the soil damages the gravestones, and the surface of the gravestones have flaked off. Some gravestones are reused even as modern graves. So we decided to record their current condition using 3D digital documentation. There are about 150 gravestones in Bahrain, and we completed measurement of all of the gravestones in Bahrain. In the beginning of the project, we are very nervous because Shia people often visit graves. So we thought they might be upset if they saw us working there. In fact, many people sometimes looked at us and talked to us. But when we explained the project carefully and show our 3D models to them, they were very happy. Some people gave us water, juice, and snacks, and others even guided us, and they always say, oh, there are better graves over there, like that. And some gravestones were also difficult to access. This is a gravestone of a religious leader, and local people still worship this grave today. To protect this grave, a building was built around it, and the grave is usually covered. We thought it would be impossible to do 3D documentation of this important gravestone. However, local people we met at the cemetery called the person in charge. They allowed us to enter the building, and even they removed the cover of the gravestone for us. We are very surprised because the local people are very supportive of our project. Now, you can access all of the 3D models of the graves on our page of the Sketchfab. We hope this database will help future studies of Islamic period in Bahrain and the preservation of the gravestones. Now this project is finished, so now we are working on 3D digital documentation of gigantic burial mounds, which are believed to be Dirm Royal Mound. So we measure them one by one. Another project we started in 2023 is a training in 3D digital documentation of cultural heritage. I think archaeologists in the Middle Eastern countries, they are very good at excavations, but some people, they don't like drawing. So we decided to skip hand drawing, and we decided to teach them 3D digital documentation. Well, first we started training workshop in Bahrain in 2023, but last year we held workshop in 3 countries, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. So last year in Kuwait, we organized workshop on UAV mapping of archaeological sites. In Bahrain, we organized workshop on 3D digital documentation of architectures, such as traditional building, large burial mounds, and museum galleries. In Saudi Arabia, we also organized workshop on 3D digital documentation of archaeological objects. Experts from Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and UAE joined these workshops. If experts joined all of the 3 workshops, they could learn how to record almost anything in 3D. In total, 57 experts joined last year. I think impact of workshop was very high. After the workshop, a conflict broke out in the Middle East. Now the experts in the Middle East think it is very important to record cultural heritage in 3D in case of emergencies. I think our workshop will become more important in the near future. This year, around November, we plan to invite experts from Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait to Japan for another workshop. I think this project is very successful. For example, an archaeologist from Bahrain, her name is Marshall. She's still young, but she's very motivated. Now she has mastered 3D digital documentation skills. Recently, British and Danish teams in Bahrain often ask her to do UAV mapping. Now she is also teaching 3D digital documentation to young Bahraini specialists. In addition, they created their own page on the Sketchfab, and they started to upload 3D models of important archaeological findings from Bahrain. So finally, I would like to introduce an event we held in Tokyo last April. In April last year, we held a lecture and hands-on event called History and Culture of Bahrain at our institute. Last year, the expo was held in Osaka, and Bahrain had its own pavilion. Sheikh Khalifa, the person in charge, came to Japan for the opening event of the expo. So we were asked by him to have an event not only in Osaka, but also in Tokyo. That is why we organized this event. At the same time, we wanted to make this event enjoyable, not only for adults, but also for children. At the lecture event, I talked about burial mounds in Bahrain, and Mariko, she's a very famous archaeological influencer in Japan. She also gave a talk about Japanese ancient burial mounds, and she also performed songs and dance. For the hands-on event, we prepared various digital contents. For example, for this event, we prepared a 3D model of Dilmun Royal Mound. Participants put on VR goggles and explored the Royal Mound at full scale. They could walk inside the mound freely virtually. This content was very popular, especially with children. We also measured ancient Dilmun stamp seals, which were used 4,000 years ago by Dilmun merchants, and we made replicas with a 3D printer. At the event, cuneiform expert Dr. Horioka wrote visitors' names on clay tablet in Sumerian. Then visitors chose a Dilmun stamp seal and stamped it on the clay tablet. And they took this clay tablet their home as a souvenir. This content was also very popular, especially with children. In addition, the Bahraini side provided traditional Arabic sweets and Arabic coffee. Other groups also presented various digital contents. The event was very successful, and about 160 people visited. In the future, I hope to have a similar event in Bahrain for Bahraini kids as well. This is my dream. So that is all for my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Abe-san. This concludes all the scheduled presentations for today's seminar. We will now take a short break and resume the meeting at 5:55 p.m. Japan time and 10:55 a.m. European time. If you have any questions about the 4 presentations today, please submit them via Zoom chat function during the break. A question can be written in either English or Japanese. Your message will be visible only to the speakers and the seminar organizers. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We will now begin the panel discussion featuring all the presenters from the first half of this seminar. To moderate this discussion, I'd like to introduce Dr. Okazaki Rumi, Associate Professor of Shibaura Institute of Technology, a subcommittee member of the Africa Working Group of JCIC-Heritage, and a member of ICOMOS CIPA. Okazaki-san, please.
Thank you, every speakers, for the very informative presentations. We had a very wide framework from Professor Grazia tutti. And then we had interesting examples from the Italian team, Professor CONTI and Fiorini, and from Professor Noguchi and Professor Abe made international collaborative works. So before we go into discussions, I have realized that today's session, because we are talking about Italian and European context and the Japanese context, we lacked a little bit of the information about the Japanese side. So I'd like to ask Professor Noguchi to just to give us a very short comment about the Japanese state through maybe the project of the Italian team.
Okay, so I mentioned only about overseas examples and also Abe-san as well. So, of course, we have a lot of practices in Japan of 3D documentation of architecture, archaeological sites, and so on. But I'm really impressed by Italian challenges about integrating different type of sensors, mechanics, and methods. So this means not only scale of object, but also how can I say, scale of range of project. So in this regard, we don't have such large-scale integrated application of digital documentation of cultural heritage in Japan. So we would like to learn about this type of project management from Italy side.
Thank you. So I think in Japan, we have a lot to learn from Europe and from Italy. I think we have a lot of projects concerning digitization of our heritage as well, but the scale of the project is still quite limited. And I think the example from the Pitti Palace especially was a very interesting example for us. Okay, so I'd like to go into the discussion now. And so this seminar, we have outlined the overview as to using the data and returning the digitized heritage to the society. But when we talk about returning, what does returning actually mean? Perhaps the possibility could be public access to data. There may serve as better conservation decisions, as educational resources, tourism and regional revitalization, community participation and ownerships, and so on. So we've seen many examples already, but we also need to think about how do we ensure this digital documentation remains understandable and trustworthy for the future generations. So what can we, how can we preserve this data to the future, for example, after 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and so on? I'd like to ask our presenters first, maybe Professor Alessandro CONTI. Could I ask, for example, the Pitti Palace example, how would you consider to preserve this data for the future generations? Do you hear me? Professor TUCCI, are you able to hear my voice? Perhaps I could ask the same question to Mr. Abe, because especially your research field is in, okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
we are back.
Okay, great. I will start with Dr. Abe. Okay, so because our data is very precious, but it's very difficult to maintain this data for the future generations. And especially in Dr. Abe's case, you have a lot of wars. You have been working in war zones. And how could we ensure this data to be safe and to be passed on to the future generations?
Actually, now our institute uses Sketchfab because it's very easily accessible from the public people, and for us it's free. So we use a Sketchfab. But if the company of Sketchfab collapsed all of the data, we will lose. So I think I have a very I would like to know more details about digital library. Dr. TUCCI mentioned in your presentation. If you explain details about it. Digital library in Italy. Could you explain a little bit more?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
The question was for me? Yeah.
Yes. So how can we
Yeah.
preserve these data and to pass on to the future generations? And
Yeah. Professor Haba was talking about digital library. This digital library is the institution within the Ministry of Culture that is responsible for coordinating the national plan for the digitalization of cultural heritage. So its role goes far beyond simply funding digitization project. They are trying to build a national framework needed to ensure that cultural heritage data can be produced, preserved, shared. So they are, for example, preparing some technical guidelines and standards promoting interoperability among museums, archives, libraries. So that's that makes people able to facilitate access to cultural heritage data for research or for education and public engagement. So the idea is to transform digitization from a collection of isolated projects into a coherent national ecosystem. I don't know if I answered to the question.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this kind of manual is already set for the.
Yeah. And no, just one question. You were talking before. You were talking about preserving data for the future. This is one of the greatest challenges we have to face today. especially in the areas you showed you were working in areas exposed to natural hazards, to climate change, conflicts, or other threats. So the first challenge is technological, because digital data may appear permanent, but in reality they are fragile.
Yes, I believe many of our data are in our hard drive, but also in the cloud, and we cannot be very sure that the cloud is safe, even though we cannot see it and think that it's permanent. Yes. Okay. So, to Professor Conti, may I ask, for the Pitti Palace, you have mentioned that the data is enormous, and you already have like a nice database viewer and such. But how much of this data is shown to the public? You have shown us the beautiful video of the palace for the exhibition, but how could this data be used in the future, or how much of it would be public?
Most of this data are not visible to the public. The video you have seen about the exhibition is online, but it's related to an exhibition that now is closed. And on one side, we thought of our project more considering the managing issues more than the dissemination to the public. We would like to make them more accessible, and maybe it could be interesting to share them using the new options that Digital Library is developing. They are starting now, so many details are still ongoing. So we would like to make them more accessible. On the other hand, I'm not sure that it will be easy, because they are really a big amount, and it's not easy to find the right interfaces for making accessible so many data this way.
Yes, I can imagine that it must be very difficult. What would be the bottleneck of this dissemination? Is it the funding? Is it manpower, education for the experts? What would be the most difficult part for this?
May I? Oh. Who is supposed to answer? Sorry, Rumi.
I'm sorry, I was continuing the discussion with
Okay.
Conti, but
Okay, fine.
yes.
Perfect.
But
sorry, I have not understood the first part of your question.
Oh, excuse me. So, when you are disseminating this information, because I think this future use is very important, but for the dissemination, what would be the bottleneck? Would it be the funding, technological aspects, or maybe capacity building in order to actualize these projects?
On one side, there are some technical issues, of course, funding and money is always a bottleneck on this side. But I think that on the other hand, there is still some issues from the administrators' side. Sometimes they don't see the opportunity to use this material, even on one side, but for dissemination, but mostly for I'm insisting on this aspect on management. Our work, of course, has been expensive for them, but they are not updating data. So we did it only a few years ago, but now we think they are not no more updated, and this is the most relevant aspect, I think, because not updated data are no more useful in a short time. It's a matter of ensuring the continuity of information, but sometimes we find that the same issue is connected to most of our the stakeholders we deal with. They like to have something for events, for single events, but don't see the continuity of the projects.
So, Okazaki-san, can I say
Yes,
something?
please.
So I would like to say something from different aspects. So in Japan, unfortunately, cultural heritage digital data is still often treated as intermediate product, not final product, as sources of finalized illustrations, drawings, or other form of rendering. And sometimes digital data are not recognized as targets of long-term archive. So here in Japan, establishment of institutional archival strategy is necessary as soon as possible. So I find that European initiatives could be a great achievement. So is it correct? So how do you manage this issue in Italy? I would like to ask you, Professor Tucci.
Okay, just starting from the question before, I believe the bottleneck is no longer digitization itself. We are very good at producing data. The challenge is making those data understandable, interoperable, and useful for different communities. So the success of digital heritage will depend on our ability to connect technology, institution, experts, and society. I think that you showed before an interesting diagram, because it shows that digital documentation is not an isolated technical activity. It starts from reliable data standards, but its ultimate objective is broader. The value of digital heritage grows as it moves through different levels of society. You showed from institutions, local communities, from community initiatives to individual engagement. So I think that digitization creates value not only by preserving information, but by enabling participation, collaboration, knowledge exchange. So this perspective is close to what we are discussing in Europe today through initiatives such as that common European data space for cultural heritage and ACOS. And I liked the circular nature of this model. it reminds us that heritage is not a one-way process in which institutions deliver knowledge to society. Communities also contribute knowledge, interpretation, and new uses, which in turn enrich the heritage ecosystem. So I don't know. It's like a connect. They are a tool for building a connection between heritage, people, and institution. Not only a method for recording monument.
Thank you. Yes, that was very easy to understand. That that comes back to the first question, that what does returning digitized heritage to society mean? Probably it's not just the data itself, but the participation and collaboration and exchange that you've just mentioned. So I think in Japan we are still trying to. We also have a lot of people working on digitization. So this part is also becoming more economic and fast and easy. So it's becoming less challenging, but the part that we need to connect with people is a challenge. Thank you. Then, yes.
No, please.
Okay. So then I'd like to go back to the data that is that we are collecting in enormous quantities, but also we have to ensure the quality of the data. And we have learned from your presentations that the network of the geoinformatics is very important. And we were discussing among the Japanese team that probably you would also have the similar problems, but we are in a very seismic country with a lot of earthquakes. And so when we have the points, the point itself might move, or also even if we have targets, those targets might move in the future. So how do you deal with this kind of moving state in Italy or in your projects?
Really, movement should be managed through a monitoring strategy, not through isolated surveys. We need a stable reference system, repeated measurements, documented workflows, and integration with structural analysis and sensor data. Only in this way, I think we can distinguish real deformation from measurement noise or processing errors or some movement. I think that just monitoring can help us. And really, I have to admit that I don't have a lot of experience in the seismic area, in seismic area. So we didn't face this problem, but okay, I guess from theory, from my experience, that the monitoring could be an answer.
Yes, I think we really need this monitoring system in Japan, because everything is moving.
It's moving, yeah. In this case, digital documentation should not be considered a static archive. It should be a dynamic system for monitoring, comparison, and then decision support.
Yes, because Professor Noguchi was mentioning that in Japan, all the stones and wooden structure is thought as a moving object. So we need to think of it as
A stronger,
yeah,
yeah.
it's not a stable object, but a moving object. So,
But this is really a question of monitoring. This is the same problem that we have here when something is moving. The only solution is repetition of measurement, controlling, documented, and then analysis, data analysis. It's something more related to the monitoring system. And we have the instrument to do that?
okay, so continuous monitoring is another aspect that we would probably need to dig into, and could be something that we could exchange information in the future, because these things are needs a lot of accumulation of knowledge. Okay, so next question would be about the ownership of data, because this is also like a gray zone oftentimes. And I would like to ask Professor Noguchi, in your experience, you have worked in different countries, and in your projects, when you work with, for example, the archaeological heritage sites, could you give us a project example of what if there is like a strong ownership of data?
Yes, so actually it is very various in different countries. So for instance, in one country, local people have very strong attachment to their cultural tradition. So in this case, they claim a strong right for data. But in other countries, major focus of utilization of cultural heritage is on sightseeing tourism. So in this case, local people are not interested with data, because those data are only for people working in tourism sectors. So how can I say? So there is no common sense about digital data, and so treatment of digital data is different from this background.
Thank you. And Dr. Abe, for example, in your Sketchfab data, who would be the owner of this?
I have no clear idea, but let me explain some example in Japan. Like in Japan, in Japanese archaeology, 3D digital documentation is very, spreading very rapidly because it's a, archaeological site. There is no owner. But like in art history, in academic of art history, 3D digital documentation does not spread like archaeology. Like, Japanese, in Japan, we have a lot of, Buddha statues, but, Buddha statues have owners. So ownership, belongs to the, owner, like temples. So, that is one of the reasons why, art history in Japan, they don't use the 3D documentation to record, Buddha statues, because I think ownership belongs to temples. So it's very difficult to publish the data. So I think some ownership, the issue of ownership sometimes prevent spreading of 3D digital documentation technology even in academic world. This is my idea.
Rumi, may I add something?
Yes, please.
I think that it's really a crucial point, because data, I don't have a clear idea. it's a really a big issue, but I agree with what has been said now. Now, data ownership is rarely straightforward because many stakeholders contribute to the creation of digital data. I prefer to speak about data stewardship rather than ownership. Because the crucial questions are who preserves the data, who guarantees their quality, who can access them, and how they can be reused in the future. Because cultural heritage data should be protected, but whenever possible, they should also remain a shared resource for research, conservation, and society. We often say that nobody owns cultural heritage itself. We are only its custodians for future generations. I think the same principle should increasingly apply to digital heritage data.
Thank you for that perspective, very important one. I think this this really connects to the notion of the ownership of cultural heritage, that it should be um, for the community, because it may not be just for one owner, but this word of stewardship and custodians of cultural heritage seems to be more wider in concept and right. Okay, so I think we have been for this theme. I think ethics is also a theme that connects to the previous questions, and I think the possible stakeholders could be government, researchers, technology providers, or local communities. It's very it's a very important aspect that we have to consider, and especially concerning the community, because the heritage must be owned by the community, and so this how the society could benefit from this cultural heritage is a really complex issue. And so I think the management of these digital heritage data is also receives less attention rather than data acquisition, because often we are talking about acquiring data, but when it comes to maintaining or managing digital heritage, it receives less attention. For example, common problems could be project funding. When the project funding ends, the data management ends. Or what the speakers have mentioned, when the servers disappear, this could be another problem. Also, I think there is problems about formats, because recently we have several formats, but in the future it could be a different format. So this kind of conversion is something that we must think. Also, when we are talking about platforms, we from the Italian team, we have received information about Europeana, which has been a very strong and established platform. I would like to ask Professor Noguchi about the Japanese state of what kind of platforms we are developing or we are trying to develop.
Yes, so still many of actors still use SketchUp as a primary platform for data storage. So there is no national or any other I can say a public open platform for 3D digital data so far. So it is very critical for sustainable future of 3D digital data utilization. So we are very focusing about the European initiative. So we should learn and we should create or we can join to your initiatives rather than create our own platforms independently.
Thank you very much. I think we are often very, it's in Europe, it seems like there is a more organized team. But in Asia, sometimes it's very difficult to get together. And and still, we are struggling to organize ourselves in Japan. So we very much like to learn from the European scope.
Rumi, may I add something?
Yes.
Well, just I think that the two last questions are connected in some way because from my perspective, society benefits when digital data become a shared resource. And in this case, the platform is a way to share these digital resources. But even in Europe, I think that this is still very much a work in progress. Okay, Europeana have achieved remarkable results in improving access to cultural heritage and promoting common standards. However, we are still in a phase of development and experimentation, and I don't think that there is a lot of distinction in this case, and maybe we need to work together also in this for this aspect.
And with the continuing wars and climate change and disasters, I think it's very necessary to really collaborate globally. So I think our time is almost over, but thank you very much for this very precious discussion. And I think we have looked into this returning digitized heritage to society concept from various perspectives. And we could probably conclude that if the public cannot benefit from the information we generate, we can't really say that heritage has been digitally preserved. So thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
So thank you to all the speakers for participating in the panel discussion. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for your valuable contribution and insightful remarks, which has greatly enriched the seminar today. To conclude today's seminar, it is our pleasure to invite Mr. Ogiwara Tomonari, Deputy Manager of the Office for International Cooperation on Cultural Heritage at the Agency for Cultural Affairs of Japanese Government, to deliver the closing remarks.
はい、皆様こんにちは。文化
Hello, everyone. My name is Ogiwara from the Agency for Cultural Affairs. As we conclude the 30th workshop on the Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, I'd like to say a few words as one of the co-organizers. First, I'd like to express my gratitude to the speakers who joined us at today's webinar, as well as to Professor Okazaki, who served as the discussion moderators. I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us for today's seminar. Today, we had some very insightful presentations on the current state and the future prospects of digital documentation of cultural heritage delivered by the practitioners from both Japan and Italy. In recent years, the digitalization of the cultural heritage has been significantly transforming the way we document and preserve it. This has reaffirmed our understanding that it's not merely a technological innovation, but rather the foundation that expands the possibilities for the transmission of the cultural heritage. Japan and Italy have been working together to address various issues related to cultural heritage preservation that both countries face, such as mural restoration, landscape conservation, and seismic retrofitting of the building. And this year marks the 160th anniversary of the establishment of the diplomatic relation between Japan and Italy. And I hope that today's dialogue will serve as an opportunity to further deepen the friendship between our two nations. I hope today's discussion will prove meaningful to all participants and contribute to efforts to preserve cultural heritage in the digital era. In addition, the Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, which organized this seminar, serves as a platform for fostering collaboration among experts and organizations across various fields involved in international cooperation and cultural heritage and conducts research, outreach, and other activities. We believe that the role of a consortium for international cooperation and cultural heritage plays in building networks along technology will become increasingly important. With an eye toward what digitalization requires in the field of cultural heritage and what we can offer or contribute, we look forward to continuing to share information and collaborate with you all. We appreciate your support and cooperation in advance. Finally, I'd like to once again express my gratitude to everyone who attended today's seminar and to all speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ogiwara-san. Before closing the seminar, please allow me to share a few announcements and updates from JCIC-Heritage. This year, JCIC-Heritage will hold its 20th anniversary commemorative symposium on November 28th. Further details will be announced on our website and through our email newsletter in due course. We hope you will find the event of interest and, if possible, join us this special occasion. Regarding today's seminar, a recording of the session will be made available on our YouTube channel, and the printed seminar report will be published within this fiscal year. Further details will be announced on our website and through our email newsletter. We encourage you to stay tuned for updates. Finally, we would appreciate your cooperation in completing our feedback survey. A link to the survey has been sent to your registered email address for today's seminar. Thank you in advance for sharing your comments and suggestions. This concludes the 38th regular seminar of JCIC-Heritage. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to all our speakers, panelists, and participants. We look forward to welcoming you to future JCIC-Heritage events. Have a wonderful day and evening, wherever you may be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you once again for this enriching exchange.